We try to also, what's important for us is to make it that people can actually use it. And so we don't necessarily provide the imagery, we do provide the information that we derive from the imagery. So that is something that we're trying to really focus on and see how much we can support also the member states with this.
Hey SpaceWatchers, this is Space Café Radio, your channel about trends, great people and awesome events. We are in Oslo on day one of the Global Space Conference on Climate Change, GLOC, in May 2023. And our contributor Remco Timmermans got the very unique opportunity to talk with Einar Bjørgo, the director of the Division for Satellite Analysis and Applied Research at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, and manager of United Nations Satellite Center, UNOSAT. Remco talked with Einar about the mandate of UNOSAT and its activation. Enjoy this conversation.
Hello, we're here with the director of UNOSAT, the United Nations Satellite Center, Einar Bjørgo. I hope I pronounced that correctly, the director of UNOSAT. Before we dive into some of the topics that are being discussed here at GLOC, can you give us a little introduction of what UNOSAT does?
Sure. So we're part of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. We're based in Geneva. We have a very close collaboration with CERN, so we have all our service there. And in general, you can think of us as a service entity within the United Nations system on satellite imagery. So we do training and capacity development, we do operations, and we do also a lot of research in terms of AI and other topics like that.
Okay, that's really interesting because you mentioned that in your talk earlier, you were asked to give us a summary of what is the most important element in future satellite data, and your answer was very short, AI.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, definitely. For us, what we have seen is that we are a small team. And moving forward, there's going to be so much data. And so that's why we have developed our own flawed AI algorithm. And this works very nicely, I have to say. We also have looking now at domain assessments, but that's a bit harder to do. But with the flawed AI, it works very nice. And we are also then able to do it much faster. To get the products out much faster and also include, like dashboards and making sure that we can combine them with other information, such as, for example, people living within the flood-affected areas, what kind of agricultures are affected, etc. And also, of course, the statistics on how much is flooded.
Okay. Now, you mentioned products and services and dashboards that you provide. Can you tell us a little bit more about what UNOSAT does and when is UNOSAT involved, engaged, activated?
Yeah. For natural disasters, we are activated by agencies on the ground, typically. And then we also collaborate very closely with the International Space Charter. So we have lots of information that we develop through that channel. But not only, of course, we also work in war situations and other types of crises. But also in other developments, we're looking at how we can use this for product monitoring, looking at even villages for election planning. So it's a wide range of applications that we can use this technology for.
Okay, and as SAT, it says the United Nations Satellite Center, satellite data is the most important input for this activation information.
Yes, but then we try to also, what's important for us is to make it that people can actually use it. And so we don't necessarily provide the imagery, we do provide the information that we derive from the imagery. So that is something that we're trying to really focus on and see how much we can support also the member states with this.
Okay. Now, there are different organizations that provide these activations that make satellite data and other data available in the case of disasters. One of them is UN SPIDER. How does that arm of the United Nations complement what UNOSAT is doing?
No, I think we're quite complementary. I would say we are slightly more operational than UN SPIDER, but we have a very good relationship and we work very closely together.
And how about the Copernicus?
Yeah, we also work very well with them. We have something called the Satellite Mapping Coordination System. And we are really, so that is between us and the Copernicus. So that is also something that we do. And we make sure that we don't duplicate too many efforts. For example, for the recent earthquake in Turkey and in Syria, we did Syria and they did Turkey.
Okay, and who is the customer? It's probably the wrong word, but how can authorities engage with UNOSAT? And how do they know to engage with UNOSAT or with EMS or with UN Spider, or doesn't it really matter?
It doesn't really matter. I think from our side, we try to be very active. And as I said, I think we have EMS is one thing, but we do try to make sure that we work on many other fronts as well. So I think it's, countries can choose, but often they do come to us, yes.
Now, one of the things that you also mentioned to us is coastal communities. They're extra vulnerable, and you've mentioned it during this interview a few times before. You seem to focus on coastal communities especially because they are extra vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So what role does UNOSAT play in protecting these communities?
As I said, we work very closely with the governments. So it's very important to work hand in hand with the governments. And in these places, we have our own staff that works hand in hand with the governments. And we see how then we can develop tools so that the government can, together with the local community, we stay out of it. But they have these tools that they can use and see how much, for example, if you have to move a coastal community, they typically don't want to move so far because it's their ancestral land. They have lived there forever. But then, of course, if that is a community that is going to be flooded every time or hit by hurricanes every time, then, we have to see and work with them so that they can move them to a safer space.
Right. Now, you mentioned these vulnerable communities who are prone to floods. What types of the world are we talking about? Is this worldwide? Can this be in Europe and America as well, in Africa and in island nations, for example?
Yeah, we work typically in the small island nations, but it can be anywhere. But we have typically now focused on the small island development states because they are the one that are most at risk at the moment.
Yeah, so there was an interesting conference just 2 weeks ago on the Maldives, the Space for Island Nations conference for the first time. Is this an area that has your special interest and you have people on the ground, you say? Is that typically in places like that?
Yeah, we don't have the Maldives, but we would love to be there. But so far we have in many small island developing states like Fiji, Vanuatu, and other places.
Excellent. During the conference, we also heard about the need of different types of EO. We heard a representative of the Maldives Space Research Organization talk about the fact that some of the islands in the Maldives represent 1 pixel in a satellite image. We need higher accuracy, higher fidelity. I know that you also talk about the need of different types of Earth observation data. So how does the EO sector need to adjust and diversify perhaps to better meet UNOSAT and coastal community needs?
I think the technology is there. You can have a 30 centimeter resolution. So I think if countries could better access this information, but of course, as I said, it should be based on real impact, to be able to monitor that impact and see how they best can resolve these cases.
So what type of satellite data are we talking about? How does it need to be more varied? What new types of satellite data would we need for your...
In some cases, you need very high resolution, so 30 centimeter resolution. Other cases, you don't need that. So it's a diverse set of factors that plays in.
Is it also about different bandwidth or maybe different technologies like radar for specific things?
Also.
Okay. Now, let's look a little bit at the future. Climate impact is going to increase. Climate change is here to stay. We talk about going over the 1.5 degrees limit. How does UNOSAT see itself in, say, 5 or 10 or 15 years? What will be the role of UNOSAT? How will it probably grow, increase?
Yeah, I think we have been growing steadily. So I expect that also to continue. But what is also very important for us is to really listen to the end users. So I think it's more important to think about that than necessarily how can we grow as fast as possible. So for me, that's one thing. Another thing is that we should make use of new technologies such as AI, and we do that already. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a technical staff to develop some of these applications, or do you depend on external
we
parties?
have technical staff ourselves, yeah.
So how big is this organization, if I may ask?
We have about 58 people now. So we're not big, but we have been growing steadily, as I said. And then we also collaborate with with universities and researchers. So we also develop algorithms based on that.
I was going to ask about that. What is the relation with UNOSAT and the rest of the space data industry, both institutional and private?
We work a lot with the private sector because they have the high resolution images. So, for example, if you need to task, like in a war situation, then we typically go to the private industry. But sometimes, as I said, we can also rely on coarser resolution images, and then we can just download them for free. Yeah.
Okay. In the number of activations, what should I be thinking about? Is there activations like every week or every month or every day?
It's been increasing a lot. Yeah, I think last year we had 40 activations in terms of natural disasters.
Okay, and
so that's almost one per week. Yeah.
And how has that grown over the last years?
Yeah, it has been really growing. Yeah, I'd say a couple of years back we were maybe at 20. So yeah, it's grown.
Has the nature of these activations changed as well? You were talking about war situations, but also climate related. So it can be natural or human disasters. Has the variety of activations changed over time?
And not so much for the natural disasters, but of course now we do a lot on conflicts, on human rights, and that is what has been going lately.
Can you give us a few examples of what human rights activations would mean? Is that refugees, war situations? What do you think about?
Yeah, typically refugee situations, but also investigations that are leading to potential,
war crime situations, for example.
Yeah.
Also in recent conflicts, is UNOSAT involved in relations with the ICC, for example, in The Hague?
I'm actually a technical advisor for the ICC.
Oh, that's very interesting, because there's a lot to do also about the legal status of space data in legal cases.
Yeah, we have UNOSAT staff giving testimony several times at the ICC.
Okay, that's very interesting. I think we've gone through all the questions, so thank you very much for your time, Mr. Bjørgo, and
thank you.
Thank you for this introduction to UNOSAT, which I'm sure many of our listeners know about, but many of our listeners also are less familiar with, so thank you very much for giving us a little insight, and I wish a very successful continuation of the GLOC.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you have further questions, reach out to us at radio@SpaceWatch.Global. If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Thorsten Triening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.